follow my lead if you can. Thank you. And then we will have noble silence following the chant. The first precept, do no harm but cherish all life. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of compassion. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The second precept, do not take what is not given, but respect the things of others. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of virtue. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The third precept, do not engage in sexual misconduct, but practice purity of mind and self-restraint. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of purity. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The fourth precept, the third precept, do not engage in sexual misconduct, but practice purity of mind and self-restraint. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of purity. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The fourth precept, do not lie, but speak the truth. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of truth. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The fifth precept, do not involve yourself in the trade of liquors and drugs which confuse or weaken the mind, but keep your mind calm and clear. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of wisdom. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The sixth precept, do not speak of the misdeeds of others, but try to understand them with sympathy. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of friendship. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The seventh precept, do not praise yourself nor condemn others. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of respect. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The eighth precept, do not withhold your aid, material or spiritual, but give freely of yours wherever there is need. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of wealth and generosity. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The ninth precept, do not hold on to anger, but be forgiving. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of happiness. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. The 10th precept, do not disparage the Triratna, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but uphold them. If you violate this precept, you will destroy your seed of faith. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. Could I have our incense lighters please come forward? And if you would look inside of your chant book in the front, there should be the incense offering. And then oftentimes we're chanting, and we're reading something at the same time. So if you just put one hand in prayer and hold the book in the other hand, that's a good way to do it. In gratitude, we offer this incense throughout space and time to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting careful efforts, wholehearted awareness, and the fruit of understanding, slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. Good morning. A few courtesy announcements before we start the regular service. Families with small children are welcome to use the downstairs area for their needs. There's a water fountain and cups available downstairs as well. If you find there's need for seats of family members who like to sit together, please adjust your seats accordingly. So I guess the idea is if somebody comes in with a big family that just kind of move in either on the cushions or on the seats so they could sit together. Please don't walk directly in front of the dais during the service. Go around the back. The bathrooms are just on the other side of that gray wall there. We're chanting at a medium upbeat tempo. So the idea of the chanting is to breathe life into the teachings. So just try and keep that in mind during the chanting. I invite everyone to stand up and silently greet each other. And remain standing, and in your chant book, we'll be chanting the 3 refuges together. I believe that is on page 7. I go for refuge to Buddha, my truly awakened, the source of understanding and compassion, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to Dharma, the path of mindful living, leading to healing, joy, and enlightenment, the way of peace, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to Sangha, the loving and supportive community of practice, realizing harmony, awareness, and liberation, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I am aware of the 3 jewels in my heart. I vow to realize them. I vow to understand what it means to end suffering. I vow to cultivate loving kindness and compassion, and to practice joy and equanimity. I vow to live simply and sanely, content with few possessions, and to keep my body healthy. I vow to let go of all worry and anxiety in order to be light and free. I am aware that I owe so much to my parents, teachers, friends, and all beings. I vow to be worthy of their trust, to practice wholeheartedly, so that understanding and compassion will power, and I can help living beings to be free from their suffering. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. And we'll continue on page 8 with the Heart Sutra. Dhamma Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. Bodhisattva of great compassion from the deep practice of Prajna Paramita, perceive the emptiness of all five skandhas and deliver all beings from their suffering. O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form, form is emptiness, emptiness form. The same is true of feeling, thought, impulse, and consciousness. O Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They are not born nor annihilated. They are not defiled nor immaculate. They cannot increase nor decrease. So emptiness, no form, no feeling, no thought, no impulse, no consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind. No realm of sight, no realm of consciousness. No ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance. No old age and death, nor extinction of none. No suffering, no cause of suffering. No cease of suffering. No path to be out of suffering. No knowledge, no attainment. No realization, for there is nothing to attain. Bodhisattva holds on to nothing but Prajna Paramita. Therefore, the mind is clear and inclusive ignorance. Without ignorance, there is no fear. Away from all perverted views, one reaches final nirvana. All Buddhas, past, present, and future, through faith in Prajna Paramita, attain to the highest perfect enlightenment. Know then the Prajna Paramita is the great Dharani, the great and fearless mantra, the utmost supreme mantra, which is capable of allaying all pain. This is true beyond all doubt. Proclaiming now the wisdom of Prajna Paramita. Gate, gate, arahate, arasamgate, bodhisattva. Gate, gate, arahate, arasamgate, bodhisattva. Gate, gate, arahate, arasamgate, Bodhisattva. Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. My name is Kunga Nyima. I'm one of the Dharma teachers here. Great to see so many people here this morning. The title of my talk today is The Buddha's Robe is Our Robe. Okay? So what I plan to do is to give you a little bit of the history of the Buddha's robe, then kind of talk about how we're all kind of wearing different robes in our lives and how we can kind of think about that with the teachings, and then come back to the idea of the teachers here at the temple and what kind of robes that we're going to wear, because since we are now part of the Heartside Mindfulness School of Mahayana Buddhism, we're going to be wearing a little bit different robes here up on the altar starting in August. So this is kind of one of those talks to kind of explain and prepare you for something different that you're going to be seeing here at the temple in a little bit. So I'm going to start with the story of the Buddha. On the Buddha's birthday at the beginning of the month, Kajesu shared a pretty good overview. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but I just want to talk about this idea of the robe and how important that was to the Buddha's life. Some of you may know that the Buddha was his original name was Siddhartha Gautama. Okay, the story goes that he was a prince in a small kingdom in India near the border of Tibet. Since he was a prince, he had a certain type of dress that he wore. He wasn't wearing these simple monk garments that we see here on the dais yet. He was wearing more princely clothes, layers of fine clothing, jewelry. The Buddha with the long earlobe is a holdover from when he was a prince, and his earlobes were stretched because he wore a lot of fancy earrings. Okay. So because of his robes at that time period, he had a certain relationship with the people that he met. Probably most people were treating him, and they were subservient to him because of his place in society. Okay? It wasn't until the Buddha had glimpses of some other robes that he decided to go forward on his spiritual path. Okay? And the story goes that there were 4 sights that the Buddha encountered to inspire him on his practice. When I started to think about the story, I thought about the robes that these different figures were wearing, and that was really how the Buddha recognized them. He didn't talk to them, as the story goes. He just saw them. So the first sight was an older person. Okay, so this person was wearing a robe of wrinkled skin and gray hair, maybe stooped over, maybe walking with a cane. Then the next sight was of a sick person, maybe wearing a robe of bandages and sores, maybe being attended by others, maybe, not conscious. The third sight was the sight of a corpse. So am I imagining this is maybe the Buddha encountered a funeral service, and so it was actually a cremation, so there was a body consumed in flames, surrounded by people mourning that loss by sadness. And then the fourth sight that the Buddhist encountered was that of the monk, probably wearing a robe like you see on the dais here, with a shaved head. And what the Buddha said was that when he saw that person just seemed at peace. They weren't suffering like the other people he had seen. And he wanted that peace inspired him to leave the palace. So the story goes that when he left the palace, it was in the middle of the night, and he is wearing his princely garments. And as soon as he enters the forest, or soon after he enters the forest, he encounters a monk, and he exchanged clothes with him. One of the stories that I read that I thought was really interesting says that the monk he met was not really a monk. It was actually a hunter in disguise. And he was hunting dressed as a monk because that way he could get closer to the animals to kill them, because they trusted the monks in the forest. Because the monks in the forest had taken vows of non-harming. So the first robe that the Buddha puts on in his spiritual journey is really a robe of generosity, because he switches his princely clothes with the clothes of the hunter. And the hunter, because he's gained this wealth, he's able to change his occupation. Okay? So I'm going to skip ahead in the story here. He's going to study for 6 years with various ascetics. He's going to become enlightened. The Buddha is going to give his first teachings and form the Sangha. So all that's going to go on before he actually has the next event in his life, which I want to talk about. Now, this is the story that talks about how the Buddha decided what his monks were going to wear, what their robes were going to look like. So the story goes that him and Ananda are up there in the mountains looking down on the valley. And the Buddha observes how beautiful the fields look, the rice fields look. You know, they're cut into nice rectangles for the farming. You know? And in our lives, I always think when you're flying in an airplane over the Midwest, and you look down, you see all the fields, you know how geometric they are, because of the way they're plowing them and cultivating the crops. So the Buddha was really inspired by that. His monks were already sewing their robes from pieces of discarded fabric, and there's a lot of rules about what kind of fabric they could use. It could be fabric that was, from corpses, fabric from bandages, fabric that had been burned, fabric that had been chewed by mice or by cows. And the idea was they would collect this discarded fabric, they would cut off the parts that were still usable, wash it, sew it together into a big rectangle, and then they would wear that rectangle after they dyed it one color, so it's all the same color. So here the Buddha was giving him the instructions that not just to only do that, but also cut those fabric into rectangles and then sew them together in a pattern. And Ananda is actually accredited with coming up with the idea of the pattern. There was a series of smaller and shorter rectangles. And the idea is that the longer rectangles represented wisdom and the shorter ones represented delusion. And I think the idea is that there's each row has 3 long and 1 short. So there's always delusion in there kind of mixed in with the enlightenment. And probably those colors of those first robes were saffron colored robes, because the Theravadian Buddhists in India are practicing the closest or the oldest Buddhist tradition, and that's the type of colors they wear in their robes. So we think that was probably the color of the original Buddha's robes. So now I want to jump ahead 2,500 years, okay, to where we are right now, and talk a little bit about the kind of robes that we're wearing, today. Not just the teachers here in Buddhism, but all of you in the Sangha, And we can think of the robes as being our clothing and also our physical body. When I gave my last talk, I talked about a Buddha with 3 bodies, okay? There's a Buddha's physical body, which is the body that we see with our 6 senses. So everything we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think about is the Buddha's physical body. So basically, anything you can experience, right? Buddha's teaching body has to do with how we apply the teachings to what we see. What the teachings say about what we're experiencing in life. And then the Buddha's wisdom body is sort of a combination of when we apply the teachings to that physical body, the kind of understanding we have that arises that helps to reduce the suffering for us. So if we think about the physical body of the Buddha as being the clothes that we wear, but also not just the clothes, but also the skin, the next thing is to take the teaching body of the Buddha and kind of apply it. So first to think about your clothing, We can think about, where did our clothing come from? Like it came out of my closet, but how about before that? I went to the store and I bought it. How did I decide what clothes to buy? What does that say about me? Before it got to the store, how did it get there? Driven there by trucks. You can think about the people that got the fabric to the store. You can think about the people that work at the store. You can go back further and think about the factory where the clothing was made. We can think about what kind of conditions were like in that factory. Was it clothing made in the U.S., made in another country? How are conditions different from people in those different countries? What are their lives like? And we can even go back further and think about what this clothing is made out of. Is it made out of cotton? Is it made out of polyester? What went into cultivating that crop? Who did that? What kind of science was used to create the polyester that we're wearing? That kind of thing. So that can be a really interesting exercise to go through when you're getting dressed, thinking about that, how you're interconnected with all these other people. So one of my daughter's fiance is reading a book called 1,000 Gratitudes or 1,000 Thanks. Anyways, it traces the story of a cup of coffee. And he tries to thank everyone that made that cup of coffee possible. So that's kind of like the idea, right? Think about what came into your clothing, and think about expressing gratitude for all that went into that. And you can also do this with your skin. We can ask about our bodies. Where did my hair come from? Where did my eye color come from? Where did my body type come from? Part of this is genetics. We inherit it from our parents. Part of it is lifestyle. Part of this is activities that we engage in on a regular basis. All these things are kind of coming together to form who we are. And just, being aware of that. And then the third thing to kind of be thinking about is, what are my own conceptions about all those different things? When I look at other people, how do I judge them based on their clothing, their skin appearance, their body type? What kind of prejudice do I bring to my human interactions? So now I'm going to return back to the idea of the temple and the teachers here and what we're going to be wearing as part of our services. So we're going to call what we're wearing vestments. Okay, that's just an idea for a clothing that you wear for a certain office. And what we have been wearing are these gray monk's robes. These are from the Korean Zen order that the temple was founded in. Okay, and the idea is that they're like the working clothes. Like, these are what the clothes you would go work on if you had to do work around the monastery. Like if you had to sweep the floors, or you going to go in gardening. It's a lot easier to do that in pants and a top than it is in the flowing robe. And then the robes would be more used for teaching situations or ritual situations. Okay? So the Dharma teachers all were ordained as Dharma teachers originally in these robes. And then the idea was that after a year of kind of giving talks and deepening our practice, then we would take on these teaching robes in the end of July, like a sort of a separate ordination for that. Just kind of a commitment to cultivating our practice. So the question was, what were we going to wear? What kind of robes did we want to wear? They're different. We're an American temple now. We're no longer a Korean Zen temple. So we didn't want to just take the robes that they were wearing already. We wanted to do something that's maybe a little bit more meaningful, a little more specific to our culture. There are some different examples about how Western Buddhists have done this. You might be familiar with the Insight Meditation Society. They're, Spirit Rock, Vipassanas groups that are in the area. There's one in Ann Arbor, and I think they're in Detroit as well, and a lot of different areas. And what they tend to wear is like business casual. The teachers just wear the same thing as the students. Sweaters and slacks or jeans. Very, very casual. Another group that has kind of dealt with this idea is the Shambhala group. I used to train with Shambhala. That's where I took my refuge vows. Chogyam Trungpa was a Tibetan monk before he started Shambhala in the U.S. But he stopped his work. I guess he resigned as a monk. And he said that the Shambhala teachers should wear suits and ties. Okay? His idea was that the Tibetan vestments were too exotic. People were coming to it and getting caught up in how exotic the culture was, and they weren't really getting the Buddhism from it, So he told the teachers they wear suits and ties. And when I did my different refuges and I did my different training seminars or retreats with Shambhala, the teacher always wore a suit and tie, And I think that's really interesting. When I brought that idea up to the Dharma Council, people were like, I'm not going to wear a suit and tie. And people are probably thinking, I don't know if people are going to want to come to the temple and hear somebody suit and tie tell them about meditation, because we have a lot of preconceived ideas about what a suit means, like, I guess, corruption, power, greed, those type of things. Interesting, Chogyam Trungpa, I guess he came from Tibet. He didn't really have those biases. So he felt like formal, looks nice, looks good. That's what you want, a certain dignity on the dais. So the Dharma Council decided that we were going to go more traditional. Okay, we decided we were going to go back to the rectangle robe that you see up here. It's a single piece of fabric over one shoulder, and it's sewn from multiple rectangles representing delusion and enlightenment. But we decided not to go for the saffron-colored robes of the Theravadian Buddhists because we're Mahayana, and there's a very big difference between those two types of Buddhism. So we decided to use brown robes. I told my wife and her sister we were going to do brown robes. She's like, boring, you know. And that's the idea, really. The idea is that the color of the robe should not excite the passions. You know, it should be something more neutral. And for me, it had a couple other reasons too that I thought were really interesting. If we think about brown robes, there is another group in the U.S. that does brown robes. Plum Village wears brown robes. Thich Nhat Hanh's group. So for me, one of the things interesting about the brown robe is that can signify the earth or be symbolic of the earth. You know, when the Buddha attained his enlightenment, one of the first things or part of that process, what he did was touch the earth as a witness to his enlightenment. If we go back to thinking about that exercise with looking at our clothes and where they come from, in the end, they come from the earth. You know, everything that exists comes from the earth. There's nothing here that doesn't come from the earth at some point, right? And after that process, you know, everything is impermanent. Everything returns back to the earth. You know, everything grows from the earth. The reason that we have light for things to grow is because the earth rotates the sun. The reason we have an atmosphere that rain is because of the earth is here to provide that gravity in that special space, that like Goldilocks zone, right, where everything can live. So I wanted to finish the talk up to go back to this idea of the robes that we all wear every day in our life. If you think about your body as being the physical body of the Buddha, I think that most of us, when we most fulfill that role, is probably when we're at rest or asleep and we're relaxed. You know, we're just present in our body. The minute we kind of wake up, our mind starts to work and we start to bring in all of our ego, and that starts to change the way reality looks to us. You know, we start to get involved with what you like and what you don't like, that kind of thing. So an interesting exercise can be to, when you wake up in the morning, to think about what kind of robe you're going to put on today. Not just your physical robe of clothing, but your robe as far as your mental outlook on the world. Okay? And let's go back to the Buddha's example. You know, the first robe that he put on, that hunter's robe, it was kind of a robe of generosity. So we can think about the 6 paramitas as these options for the Buddha's robe. You know, we have 6 different robes that we can put on in the morning when we go out for our day. We can put on the robe of generosity. We could put on the robe of patience. We could put on the robe of mindfulness. We could put on the robe of helpfulness, the robe of wisdom. Okay. So that's what I want to leave you with today. We're going to sit in our process of meditation now. Remember, this is like the idea of meditation is where we're going to touch on the Buddha's wisdom body. So in order to do that, I want you to get yourself comfortable on your cushion or on your chair. Place your legs in front of you in a position that you can be comfortable in. Try and sit up straight. Hands on your lap. If you're sitting in a chair, feet flat on the floor. Shoulders back, chin tucked in, trying to have a straight spine. And then you can have your eyes open or closed, depending on however you feel safe. Sometimes if you're really distracted, closing your eyes can help you calm. If you're really sleepy, keeping your eyes open help you be more awake. And then for the focus of your awareness, just bring it to your breath as it's coming into your body and then as you're releasing it. And if you want a little bit more concentration, count those breaths. So when you breathe in and breathe out, say 5 to yourself. Breathe in, breathe out, 4 silently to yourself, and so on till 1, and then start over. I will sound the bell 3 times to start and also 3 times at the end. So that was a little bit longer meditation than we've been doing recently. And one of the things that we've been talking about in Dharma Council maybe is to get our service a little bit more balanced, not so heavy on the teaching body and a little bit more on the wisdom body, which is our actual meditation practice. So, you know, having a little bit shorter Dharma talk and a little bit longer meditation so we can get a good 15 minutes in is one of the goals we're going to be kind of working towards. So appreciate your patience with us while we move towards that process. Now is an opportunity for us to share joys and concerns. So joys and concerns is a practice that we're cultivating to help us experience the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Loving kindness is wishing for others to be happy. Compassion is wishing that others have their suffering reduced. Sympathetic joy is sharing in the happiness of others. And equanimity is this idea of trying to be able to live life sort of balanced, you know, and to, even though we're experiencing good and bad times in our lives, to not have those experiences just throw us out of balance, you know, so that we do something that we regret later. So this idea of joys and concerns is an opportunity for us in the Sangha to share with each other from our heart, you know, things that are going well in our lives, you know, or things that are a challenge for us, so that we can all, you know, provide our support or share in your happiness. And if you just raise your hand if you have a joy or concern you would like to share. I'll start us off. My daughter is graduating from high school in a couple weeks, so she's excited. She's going to Michigan State, and that's where her sister went. So we're all kind of preparing for that, and it's an exciting time.
Four weeks ago, a young man came to the temple, and during Joys and Concerns, he shared that he had recently received a pretty devastating medical diagnosis. And as a result of that, he decided to take motorcycle lessons, fly to Nepal, and deepen his practice. And he asked me if I would mention him for a month. So next week I'll mention him again, and that we hold space for him. He's visiting he's going to Kathmandu, Nepal, Tibet, etc. on a motorcycle all by himself. So it's quite admirable. So let's just kind of keep him in our thoughts. His name is Brad.
Hi, my name is Nathan, and a couple weeks ago, my son's boyfriend's brother passed away. He was only 14 years old, and he had a brain tumor, and he passed away. So I'd like to express my condolences to his family and hope that their grief is soothed. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashton. My uncle, Mark Becker, passed away on Friday from pancreatic cancer. And we were able to be with him, and just wanted to just thank him for his positive influence on everyone that he touched. Thank you all.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy. In January, our son had an accident where he lost his left leg below the knee. And next week on Friday, I believe, he gets his permanent prosthesis. He's been through a lot of appointments being fitted and been on crutches since January. And so he's pretty excited, and we're pretty excited for this the new leg. That's my joy. And I have a concern because I was just reading this morning about the GRPS and their new policy about no backpacks for the kids now because of children bringing guns to school, gun violence in schools. And so it's a broader concern. But the thought of the kids not being able to carry their books in backpacks or to have these things in school because of this terrible epidemic is a concern that's been on my mind. So.
I have a concern about the ice because of the ice caps melting. Many viruses from thousands of years ago have been starting to be released. So I'm kind of terrified that they might reach mainland and we might not know how to control that. So
Would you like him to repeat it?
Would you like to repeat it? Or would you like what was it?
because of global warming, ice caps are starting to melt, which not only is the virus,
And the impact that could have on the
because many viruses have been released before.
I guess I'll just my concern is lately my concern is I want more purity of mind and peace.
I'd like to share a joy for all the seeds that everyone's planted into the soil and hope for their growth.
I wanted to comment that I do go to a GRPS school, and it is really hard without any backpacks. But we're hoping that by next year things will get better, and that it's a terrible thing that kids bring guns to school. I go to a GRPS school, and it's a terrible thing that kids are bringing guns to school, and it is really hard without backpacks. And and I hope that by next year things will get better.
Hello. I have a good friend, Mark, from high school who just passed away from a stroke. And he's got 6 kids under the age of 10. So if we could just think of them.
So right, take a moment and hold those joys and concerns in our heart. right, I have some announcements. The Grand Rapids Buddhist Temple Board is meeting today. Sangha members are invited to observe. That's at 11:30. It's on the third Sunday of the month. There are Buddhist-based recovery meetings Mondays at the temple. You can join via Zoom. Wednesdays at the Allen-O Club, and Fridays at the temple or join via Zoom. There is an online meditation group on Wednesdays at 7:30. You can join that via Zoom, and all these links are on the webpage and also on the newsletter if you get that. And if you don't get the newsletter, there's, I think, a place at the front. You can sign up for that, or you can sign up online as well. Are there any other announcements for this month related to the temple? Dana announcement?
Hello, everyone. I guess it is my turn to do the dawn announcement. So thank you all so much for being here. The Grand Rapids Buddhist Temple is entirely run on the generosity of the people who come here. Nothing that we do here ends up getting paid out to the people who volunteer. So in other words, nobody here gets a penny for what they do. If you volunteer here, you're not getting paid for it. The Dharma teacher is not getting paid anything. The tech team is not getting paid anything. So we really appreciate any support that you can offer. There's several ways you can support the temple. There are Dana boxes where you can donate directly on both ends of the temple. There's a QR code that you can scan, and that'll allow you to donate as well. For those of you who are online, is the camera on? Yo, the camera is on. Hello. So there's a little drop down button that you can push there.
Though, if you have to stand over here.
Oh, I have to be visible.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello. Okay, so you'll also want to click the drop down button right there, and then there should be a link that takes you to a place where you can also donate as well. And then finally, our website's zengr.org. You can donate there as well. Finally, there's also donations of time. So there's all sorts of projects going on around the temple all the time. So please ask around. There's different things you can do, and I'll probably announce a project that we'll be working on soon related to meal services. So keep that in back of your mind a little bit. Thank you.
All right, just a couple announcements before we do our closing gathas. Please, at the end of the service, please arrange and fluff your cushions. Return them to the space the same way you found it. Return the chant books to the front page and place the incense offering and month chant back in the book. Actually, we'll be doing a different chant next month, and I think this is the last Sunday. This is the last, or do we have one more day? We have one more Sunday. Yeah. So put both those back in the book, in the front page, and then we will have someone to go around collecting the chant books at the end. We do have tea and socialization downstairs after service. We invite you to join us for that as well. Please stand and we'll do our clothing gathas. This is on page 9 in your chant book. For all unskillful actions ever committed by me since of old, on account of my ignorance, greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thoughts, now I atone for them all. Vast is the robe of compassion, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Buddha's teachings for the benefit of all sentient beings. All beings, one body, I vow to liberate. Endless light passion, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. If we can have this right side face the left here.